Welcome to another episode of Learning Lua. In today's tutorial, we're going to look at the pairs and iPairs commands. Pairs and iPairs are actually known as generic for loops. They are frequently used in conjunction with tables to be able to transverse or cover the entire table and work with each item that is stored in the table. The iPairs is used with ordered tables, and pairs is used for unordered tables, and we'll look at examples for both of these. Two terms that you should be aware of are the key and value. Key is the index of how information is stored within the table. Value is the information that is then associated with that particular key. In this first example, we've created a table called My Table, and within it I've stored the elements hi, hello, world, the number 42, and inconceivable. Of course, this goes back to the information we've discussed previously with tables, where tables are not concerned about the variable type of information. So unlike arrays, we can store any type of information in a particular table rather than one variable type. Now, I'm going to initially use the iPairs tool. iPairs, as we mentioned, is for ordered pairs, and here we have just simply a sequence or order of variables that are stored within the My Table. The structure of the generic for loop is that we must have an index and value. Now, these two variables can be any name. I've used the names index and value for this for loop to clearly define that this is holding the index of the My Table, and this is the value associated with that index object as it transverses using the iPairs command. So basically this is doing the equivalent of a for loop that looks at each element in sequence of the iPairs based upon the index setting. As we've previously discussed in these tutorials, the index of a table by default starts counting at 1, so hi is going to be associated with the index of 1, hello with 2, world with 3, 42 with 4, and inconceivable would be an index of 5. So as it's transversing, we're going to see that each of these indices is associated with what has been stored inside the My Table. So iPairs is great if you have a flat table or a one-dimensional table and just want to see what's inside the table. Of course, many times when we're working with tables, especially if you're developing a game or using more complex tables that are multi-dimensional, you're needing to define this more appropriately or to be able to transverse it, and it doesn't really have an index associated with it. In this particular example, I have created My Table. For the first dimension of the My Table, I've specified name, age, seat, grade, and date. And using that definition in this initial allows me to go ahead and specify each of these more as a property of the My Table instead of, or parameter of My Table, instead of limiting it to just a single dimension. This is great if you're making an application. In my case, I'm creating an app that might be used for a classroom, or it could be used for a game in many different ways. By specifying my name, or by specifying mytable.name and then assigning it a value, we have assigned this key the value of Joe. So each name, age, seat, grade, and date have all become keys to, and then everything that we add in associated with those keys is now a value. So name is a key, age is a key, seat is a key, grade and date are all keys, and then Joe 12, B12, 7, and May 12th, 2000 is now all values associated with it. Transversing it with the pairs table, it will first go through and output all of our data that has been specified in the first parameter, or the key. So initially the key is going to be the index and then associated with the table values, and then as we transverse the table the second time, it's going to go through and look at each of these values in order. Previously, I have mentioned the pound sign in front of a table to know how many elements are inside the table, but if you use that with a multi-dimensional table, it's only going to give you the first dimension, or the first set of parameters or values that have been stored. It does not give you the second set of keys and values that's stored, or even third dimensional. So when we move into multidimensional arrays and tables, the pound sign becomes of much less value. That's why using pairs and iPairs becomes very, very useful in being able to see what has been stored inside your table and be able to do that. If you're working inside of an application and you're wanting to see what's actually stored in the table, obviously pairs and iPairs is much better than a print statement, because a print statement associated with a table is going to give you the type of output table and then a memory address. This is nice to know that it's a table, but it isn't of very much use when you're doing troubleshooting or trying to determine what's actually stored in it. I've seen that many times when I'm trying to work with more complex program. So using pairs and iPairs will quickly be able to see what's stored, as opposed to seeing just an output of that the information is stored in a table. We have a lot more tutorials and lessons forthcoming. If you'd like to follow what's happening, you can follow us on Twitter at Dr. Brian Burton, or Facebook at Burton's Media Group, or follow us on our website, burtonsmediagroup.com. If you'd like notification through YouTube, hit the like or subscribe button.